Anybody got pens and papers? So use them. Take notes. We're going to talk about the illusions of the world. The interesting thing is, we're going to talk casually. This has much to do with conversations that I got into actually on the train, and actually earlier today, while I was on 52nd Street in Philadelphia, actually talking to some brothers and sisters who happen to be, party to other organizations and stuff like that, and pretty much look at this information from a disconnect perspective. Like even when you're dealing with people that have a claim of different sects of Islam or different sects of Christianity and don't know their bloodline history, therefore there's a schism operation. And I say that apropos to bring that same conversation, because we actually ended up having the exact same conversation on the train. And then some people that were sitting in front of us came into the conversation with an emotional perspective, which demonstrated absolutely the schismology that we were talking about. And so it gave me leave to make this argument before you, and that is the illusions of the world. And the illusions of the world actually have much to do with what we call two hats. And when I say two hats, I'm going to kind of give you something to look at to give you an idea of what's going on the planet, in the world, in the manifest. When you're looking at ovoid, or 360 degrees, you can also be looking at this finial representing the sun, or the central point of reference from a universal perspective, and the epigee and the apogee of the earth in its orbital plane around the sun, which essentially is the root of earth culture, and it is demonstrated in the Fez. And so you'll see that with the finial, and you'll see umbilical cord, which represents the life form, also represents the Ra, or the rays. At the same time, the umbilical cord that comes only from the womb of woman, and you'll see the ball of mud called earth. And then you'll see the degrees of the earth as the earth dances around the sun, by degree represented by the strands. And this is the Fez. And then it has on the top of its surface, excuse these things are kind of dried out, so, and you'll see a set of circles 4 times. You'll see the center like that, you'll see a set of circles. Then you see 3 of those perforations, 3 courses. And the first course is 9 perforations. Pardon me, excuse me, I scribbled. 9, the second is 12, third one is 18. All right? And all of those have cosmological references. Now, that is the crown, what is called crown of the sun, or corona sol, or tierra, or Fez, which is the founders of the eternal zodiac, which is the culture on the planet. You'll see the illusionary, or what you call the reflection, or in the rule, which those of you know the Hermetic law of phenomena that operates in the universe, you know the rule, or what you call duality. All right. And so we're dealing with what you call de facto and de jure. All right. So de jure would relate to the reality. De facto would relate to the substitute or the flip. All right. So I'm just giving you a scenario. All right. So you would see this. Now that's the other hat. Now this would be the crown that the Peregrinos wear, or the European colonists were operating at Morocco. Are we clear? Are we clear? This would be de jure. This would be de facto. The hundreds of years of wars between these two parties, meaning the original or aboriginal peoples, then the hybrid, or what you call the Rome man, which means the red man, hybrid European Albions. And of course, over the years, the blending of the two that makes other nations. But the root problem of the world has been the conflict between these two parties. Are we clear? Aboriginal, Occidental. Aboriginal, Occidental. That's Occidental. Another code that would be used for the illusions of the world would be Eastern. Eastern mind doesn't necessarily mean distance or actual direction. Eastern, Western. Those are used loosely to set political parameters. Are we clear? Connotatively, not denotatively, connotatively. The roles were flipped. Now, the hybrid is claiming to be the sovereign of the land. Are we clear? Therefore, the hybrid takes on the title of nobility, which is called white man. Has nothing to do with complexion. It's a title of nobility. This is where the suppression of the original Article of Amendment nobility clause of the American Constitution is suppressed from the masses and only shown to people who are in what you would call your Privy Council orders, like Masonry, Skull and Bones, Daughters of the American Revolution, Illuminati, etc., Knights Templars, Knights of Columbus. All of them know that it's a status title. The masses are under the illusion that it's an identity and a complexion of skin, and are promoted to believe that. Are we clear? Are we clear? This creates the necessary schismata for social controls. Schismata is a military term for divide and conquer. Are we clear? So keep in mind, the theme is the illusions of the world. The things that we're discussing is to present to you a consciousness wherein you could use what is called maxims of law, maxims of knowledge, of making the distinction between the illusion and the real. Are we clear? Not unlike, as an example, everybody turn around, see the brother sitting in the back, and he has his shades up on his forehead, and you notice that in the movie National Treasure, when Nicolas Cage goes to Philadelphia to the Pennsylvania house, he pulls out this brick and he pulls out glasses, and it has shades just like that, the blue ether shades, and it represents absolutely just this, the illusions of the world. You pull the shades off, everything that's there was already there, but you see it totally different. So the illusions, and this is what you're actually dealing with today, fortunately and unfortunately at the same time. Fortunately, because you can put it this way, we're at an apex period on the planet where major things are happening and going to happen. And it will become more and more obvious to people. However, at the same time, it will become more and more confusing to a lot of people because they've been living under an illusion. Are we clear? And for people who don't have a background in both jurisprudence and history, it will not only be confusing, it can also be very damaging to them economically, socially, and politically. And there will be people who will be enforcing the misconceptions in order to preserve the dark priesthood who have been ruling under the mystery system. Are we clear? The two hats, you can say it's two hats, although they're crowns, it's two hats. All right, just keep it simple. Now, for those of you, and this is again conversation that we were having in Philadelphia earlier today, and inadvertently on the bus. This is why, like when we just talked to Dr. Naila on the phone, come pick us up, and she thought she was talking to Sharif on the phone because there was another brother who recognized me on the train from Philadelphia, and we were having a conversation, and he had talked to her for a minute, and so she thought it was Sharif when she picked us up, but it wasn't. It was actually a continuation of a conversation I was having in Philly, and somebody was at the train station, recognized me, brought up subject matter, right on the same subject matter, you know. But anyway, the deal is for you to really, not because you're here and we're having an interesting conversation, but you actually need to have the capacity to separate these in your both conscious mind and in your political activities by necessity, not just by interest. Are we clear? Because the imposters have accelerated their activities on multiple levels to try to save the regime that's being dismantled. Are we clear? People who don't know it are going to experience a lot of uncomfortable things, including the stealing of all their accounts. They're going to be going after your houses and a whole bunch of other things to liquidate your estate that you don't know that you have in order to try to save themselves for other pressures that have been put on them by Manchurian assassins and other people, and they have to keep the illusion going on to keep the power structure in place. Are we clear? Which is being dismantled. Are we clear? We're talking about the real politics of the planet, not just here, on the planet, but particularly at the North Gate. Are we clear? So these people in all their secret societies, from the Shriners, from the P2 Masons, down to the Knights Templar, Knights of Columbus, School Society, Illuminati, etc., have been claiming by truth, de facto, to be the keepers of the North Gate. Are we clear? That power is being dismantled and removed from them systematically, piece by piece. Are we clear? Not the necessarily, the instruments that they've created to support their stock, but the platforms upon which their stocks and bonds have been traded are being dismantled. Are we clear? So I want you to understand what I'm saying. I don't want you to accept what I'm saying without understanding what I'm talking about. We're talking about how things are actually operating. And on this bond system is the economic platform that they've been operating on since 1861. Are we clear? It's being dismantled. Fact. The estates upon which these stocks are built belong over here. They have been controlled from here. Are we clear? They belong over here. Are we clear? Therefore, the heirs, H-E-I-R-S, true beneficiaries and grantors of all the wealth are descendants of the crown of the sun, but don't know they're descendants of the crown of the sun. Are we clear? Are we clear? They actually are in a state of mind under psychological operations that human beings are crayons. And you will hear it because they always talk about colors. You know, the Carlos Linnaeus psychological warfare operations and Frederick Johann Blumenbach with the U.S. Census Bureau. That's the heirs are talking that, not knowing that they're heirs who've actually been disinherited by Romans, who they think are the true sovereigns of the land, i.e. white people. Thus the illusion. Are we clear? Not knowing that they're the white people. So the Romans have literally, politically, traded places with them, and they don't know. This is symbolized by what is called the Mummers Parade in Philadelphia. All right, where much of this chicanery took place in the 1800s. Are we clear? Which is referred to as the Al-Moroccan Revolution, or the American Revolution. Are we clear? Where all this switching places has taken place. Problem that you have is that the platform that was set up in 1861 for the political operations of this illusion is collapsing. Are we clear? Not of its own, but with help. Are we clear? So we're talking about both the forces of nature and the forces of assassins of the Manchurians, although there's others that's making this change of the platform. Are we clear? Meanwhile, the heirs of the estate, most of them are not aware that this is taking place. They're seeing things happen around the world, a bunch of false flags, a whole bunch of massive crime, killing people and stuff, and attributed falsely to Muslims, terrorists, ISIS, and stuff like that, when it's really the dark priesthood trying to maintain power that's being removed. The platforms are clear. They're called false flags, i.e. the illusions. So it's important for you not to be easily moved when things are thrown out there for you, to misguide your thought pattern. Because what they're trying to do is take your mind off of what's really happening in the world, to divert your attention, to put your energy into activities that will cause hazardous conditions for you, so they can do things and then attribute it to something else. Are we clear? But if you understand the illusions of the world, you kind of see this, the three-card Marley type thing that they're doing. You know, the illusions. But if you don't have a background, you will be subject to it, because everybody is. Because that's how the operations are set up. I mean, you were born into these operations. So you have to be made aware that you were born into a political platform that's false. And you have to be given or restored with reference points so that you can make discernment. Are we clear? So getting back to the point, now this is not something we haven't talked about in the past, but I want to make this very clear because I want to make sure that you comprehend this, what I'm telling you. Raise your hand, those of you who know about the coup d'etat, May the 10th of 1861, where the Congress for the United States adjourned sine die. Raise your hand if you're worried about that coup d'etat. Look around the room. Now, in your mind, just loosely count the amount of adults here. Consider the children and the grandchildren that come through these sources, and consider the liability that's upon them and their offspring that don't know this. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? This is why I'm making the point to you that it's important that we know what this is about. Because while we have the baby here, which is her baby, she's still ours. And if there's going to be a legacy for her, and we don't correct this stuff now, she's lost. Don't take it personal, it's the truth. And it's no joke. Now, what the Romans are trying to do is they're doing every scheme and method to block this information from getting to her. And I'm using her as an example, but she represents the rest of our babies that are out there, some here, some still in the womb, and all around that have no idea of these politics. And when the adults don't know, they don't have a chance. Are we clear? And that's not a condemnation, that is only pointing out to you your responsibility to know. Because it's your estate. Whether or not you're aware of it, it's your estate. Whether or not you care, it's your estate. It has nothing to do with beliefs, has nothing to do with opinion. It has everything to do with the true fact of the two hats that are operative in the world, particularly at the North Gate, for social controls and for maintenance of the doctrine of discovery policies and its 5 subcategories of bullas that comprises Unum Sanctum Dum Diversus, Romanus Pontifex Interpretare Divina Sisticu V Act of 1666, which is the foundation of the political operations at the North Gate and projected upon the world. Are we clear? That is the guidebook of all political heads on planet Earth today. Whether they sympathize with it or not, or agree with it or not, or are direct participants or not, it is the rule of operations. Are we clear? It is the modus operandi. Are we clear? So when you're looking at all contemporary statutory operations, you're dealing with this matter. When you're dealing with all the operations of the governments on the planet, whether you're dealing with what they're referring to as the republics, the democracies, the communist unions, etc., all of them are predicated and affected and guided by what I just stated to you. This is why it is necessary for anyone in any particular position of authority and power must belong to a secret society, because you got to know the real history to run government. I don't care what the public thinks, what their emotions are, what they believe, and it's not disrespecting them. They're not ruling anything, so therefore it's not necessary for them to know what goes on in the real world. But it is absolutely necessary for those who rule and govern any large bodies of people or affect the economic operations on the planet Earth to know the truth of the crown of the sun. This is why they wear the Moorish fez in your secret societies. I'm making a connection for you so you can understand the two hats and the de jure de facto principle. All right? So the illusions of the world pretty much are set up by the institutions, agencies, and associations that were created mostly, but not limited to, such activities that took place at North America, Morocco, northwestern Mexico, since 1861. Are we clear? Not that the other activities that preceded it didn't matter, because this is a culmination of activities, but we're using what you would call landmark. The same way you would use landmark of 1492 for the transference of powers from the Moorish Empire to the Dutch masters is the same way you would use that as a subversion point of the treaties and the Constitution in order to set up the political platforms that are operative today. Are we clear? Which are loosely known as, quote unquote, the U.S. democracy. 1861. Are we clear? Prior to 1861, that platform did not exist. Are we clear? So, the agency by which the operative administration of these COINTELPRO and Unum Sanctum decrees are exercised is May 10 of 1861, all right? Solidification is the Act of Congress 1871, all right? So in between, in that pocket of time, you have the creation and dissolution of the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, which is loosely referred to you as, quote unquote, the Freedmen's Bureau, with limited other information given to you. Except you may hear loosely this phrase thrown around without explanation, 40 acres and a mule, with no more information. All right, so That's connected to this, do you understand? And we're talking about this right now because you need to be expanded in your comprehension of what's really going on. Because what has happened, not like anything else, when something that's been misrepresented for so many decades, and the platforms upon which the deception is built is exposed, it's going to cause upheaval. And whereas people have not been paying attention or they didn't know, they've been pretty much passive. However, not to know, the uncovering is not just a fact of interest informationally and historically and by law and jurisprudence, but by fact that the heirs they've been feeling it but not knowing the operation. So it confuses them when they see the acceleration of the murders of their sons on the street. Do you understand? Whereas those who know what's really going on know it's the two hats. Are we clear? And if you know the history and the estate, you know the motive, meaning you know that they have a mission and a motive. It may and does affect us personally, but understand its execution is not personal. It may sound conflicted, but don't twist it. It's for the empire. All right? Now, write this down because we have limited space on the board, and of course you already know the problems we have with the other board. We're going to talk truth, then we're going to talk falsehood. Same category, de jure, de facto. Real, color. Actual, fictional. Veracity, prima facie. Keep that in mind so that you can keep your head together. All right? So that the conversation makes sense and that I'm not talking past you. All right? Allodial, feudal. Republic, democracy. And do these in columns so that you can always be clear. Because if you mix them, you're caught in the false matrix, which is purposeful, not circumstantial, but designed. And see, so this is how the operations go. Anybody that's caught in the false matrix is expendable. And they're accelerating so they can justify expending the people under the guise of population control. That's the front. The reality, they want to kill off the heirs to the estate. Real illusion. The point? Are you with me? All right. Those of you who read the motu proprio issued by Pope Francis in 2013, and then you see a backup address to the motu proprio with civil orders issued to President Obama, the Congress, the Supreme Court, the Marshal Services, to the police forces, etc., from Pope Francis, civil orders 2014, July the 4th, the astrological rising of Sirius behind the sun, which is actually what that is, where people think July the 4th is fireworks and stuff. It's really talking about ancient Egypt and the helical rising of Sirius behind the sun, which is why you don't see it. Everything is done in cosmological order, i.e. Moorish science, even from the Vatican. Do you understand? So I'm telling you because it's your responsibility to know this. And being heirs to the world's largest estate, it's important for you to start demonstrating some competence in comprehending what's going on in the world, because it is you who are required to make the distinction between the real and the illusion. Even if it hadn't interested you, past tense, you're held to it irregardless. And if you say that I did not know, you're going to be told that ignorance of the law is no excuse. And if you continue to make excuses, you will be held in contempt. This is again why we're having this conversation. Because we know the habit of people saying, and they're not without justification, however, the rule is still what it is. Well, they didn't teach us this in school. Well, they didn't teach us this in church. They didn't teach us this in the mosque. They didn't teach us this in the synagogue. So therefore, as soon as you go there, you're in contempt. Because the rule of the common law, which is what's attempting to be addressed by people who are talking about their rights and stuff like that, is that the enforcement and the recognition of the common law is ancient on the planet, and it only trumps the Roman law by your demonstrable relationship and cognizance of the ancient traditions and customs of your foremothers and your forefathers by immemorial acclamation and affirmation. Outside of that, common law cannot be used by you. And it is not acknowledged if you try to use it. You will be declared as colored people, which means artificial people, and non-heir in your state wards, and you will be treated under the Christian black codes, which is what they've been doing and our people have been calling racism. All right? Mistakenly, but they're trained to do that, but that's what it's called. Now, real Constantinian hegemony, write that down. This is the real. Constantinian hegemony. Constantine, just like Constantine, the Roman ruler. Constantine, Constantinian hegemony. Hegemeny. Hegemony. The illusion, the cover-up of the Constantinian hegemony. And you can put underneath it, boxed, white supremacy. So the Constantinian hegemony is what you're dealing with. You're trained like rats to keep saying white supremacy, which is the illusion, although it's practiced. Are we clear? The same way that these people are Moabite, Canaanite descendants, but they're trained to call themselves black people, like rats. That makes them not descendant. Same thing, real illusion. Real illusion. If you're in the illusion, you're plugged into the false mother, which means false matrix, which means false womb, W-O-M-B. Matrix and womb are related. So if you got a false mother, that false mother is making a claim on you. This is what the straw man is that they created 1868 when they created the ens legis operations that they registered in the state of Delaware called the Man of Straw. 14th Amendment person. And they convert the estate right to the corporate entity of the Dutch masters, which is called corporation, as person. So write that down. Not corporation, corporation as person. 1868, 14th Amendment. This is why when you deal with the 14th Amendment, it becomes obvious, scholars know it, but I'm just saying for people who don't know the history, the absence of the nobility clause of the 13th Amendment with its 20 sections, including the disparaging law or rule that members of the barristers of England cannot hold a seat of government at Morocco, i.e. the United States Republic. They could not hold a seat in office. Are we clear? All right. If you understand that again, you understand the illusions of the world, because indeed, they are indeed holding the offices. So this is the source of your economic and political problems. Therefore, the Constantinian hegemony has been institutionalized. That's the other hat. Are we clear? Are we clear? Now, when you're dealing with the politics, understand anybody in a position of power is operating by manual, what you call manual, with that knowledge that I just told you. They will be given the operational knowledge in signs, write this down, signs, symbols, and allegorical stories in order to hide it. Are we clear? They will be given the knowledge of these operations in signs, symbols, and allegorical stories. And when they reach the degrees of knowledge or gnosis in relationship to it, they will be attributed other Privy Council privileges with a death oath not to reveal, in order that this two-hat system continues without the masses understanding what's going on. And the masses will be given what is called race argument to keep them busy when they're dealing with the Constantinian hegemony, which all the rulers, all the priesthood know absolutely that's what's going on. All clear? Now, in order for you to have a chance to play this chess game with these dark priests, you've got to understand what you're dealing with. This is why this subject right now. You understand? To get past the signs, the symbols, and allegorical stories to tell you bluntly, peanut butter sandwich is a peanut butter sandwich. You don't need to interpret it. It's bread, whether it's wheat, pumpernickel, rye, or white bread, with crushed up peanuts in oil, made spreadable, put across it, and slap the other thing on, peanut butter sandwich. No, it doesn't need interpretation. Peanut butter sandwich. Thus, I'm making the explanation, the illusion. You understand? So the illusion is always put in mystery systems so that the masses don't quite get what's going on. Are we clear? The politics with the distribution, controls, and administrations of the estate of these heirs who've been hidden or somewhat buried is necessary so that they cannot become active or competent. Because in estate law, a competent heir, the estate must be released to them. Are we clear? So that the administrators or administrators of the estate can justify their continued misprision. They put out misinformation. Are we clear? The things that we're talking about right now is to remove their capacity to continue to fool you. All right? So when you know modus operandi, it doesn't matter who comes to you, whether they look like you or whether they look like Romans, that they can't fool you, because now you can count. When you was a child, you did the things that children do. Thought as a child, you acted as a child, you played the little blocks and stuff like that. When you become a man, start using a pen and paper and producing literature. Don't come up on the stage with your little blocks unless it's the little baby. You know, so we have a baby girl. If we give her some blocks and she starts spelling her name with it, you know, we'll be impressed and we'll clap for her. But if the adults do that, we're not too impressed, are we? Are we? But we don't throw the blocks away, do we? They have like numbers on them, boats, trains, colors, right? It's a learning curve for children, right? But when you become a man or woman, you don't want to go to the mall, sit in the middle of the floor playing with your blocks and expect people to gather around you and applaud you. If you do, something's wrong. And this is pretty much what we've been doing as a grand body of people in our adult age, but with a lack of knowledge of the two-hat system. And not knowing that we're looked at that way. Thinking that people are dissing us, when actually they're looking at us in the status that we've been relegated to, that we ourselves are supporting ignorantly for lack of knowledge of our bloodline, and of the estate, and of the politics. Again, the illusions of the world. So, synopsis. So when you're looking at the political platforms to maintain and to promote the illusions, you're talking about the dissolution of the Moorish Empire under the guise of the Berlin Conference of 1884 and coming up to the coup d'etat of 1861 with the platform set up for its operations. 1871, the Congress Act 1871, thus the birth, and they made a movie called The Birth of a Nation that they showed in Casablanca. So that movie, The Birth of a Nation, that they showed in Casablanca in Washington, which is called, Casablanca is the White House. It's called The Talkie. The Birth of a Nation is really the birth of the coup d'etat, 1861, with the U.S. democracy platform registered in Puerto Rico and France, which is the imitation government that's been operating since then. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Is that why that liberty is in there in Paris?
Get in the mic, because we want this on to make sure it's on the tape.
Is that why there's a Statue of Liberty in Paris? Is that the connection?
Yes, that represents the Franciscan Brotherhood. So you see, when you go back into the Germanic tribes, you will also look at them collectively as referred to as the Franks. The Franks, you see. And it's also representative of the Moabites, where the French artists gifted the operators of the Dutch masters who conquered the Corsairs in the Maghreb, which is Morocco, the most extreme west. It's not Wednesday prayer, it's North America. And with the framework made of iron and the covering made of copper, representative of the alchemical metal of Venus, which is our star, and placed in the bay at 189 degrees on the latitude scale that comes from the north to the west side of Florida, land of flowers, which is true east, and it's called the Statue of Liberty. And she has 7 spires on her crown, which is the 7 Hermetic laws, 7 principles, and it's the cycle of the culture here, i.e. Circle 7, the Moabites, subjugated. And that's the gift that was given by France to the U.S. corporate operatives for conquering us. And that's why you have that statue also in Paris. But these are symbols of actual historical facts. The real problem that we have, that's us collectively, is reassociating the heirs to their own history that they think only applies to the European. So they dismiss it as having nothing to do with them, which is some of the comment that was made on the train today on my way down here, with some passionate brothers, honest, with having no knowledge, that were speaking from emotion in relationship to this information. This is what keeps the European in power. This is another reason why the Manchurian assassins have been loose on the planet, because we're so far behind the A curve that other nations are now being damaged because we won't become active, and we are the heirs. Meaning that we've been minimized to such a degree that we are not only politically powerless, we're mentally powerless. Meanwhile, the world is moving on, and the platforms of economics on the planet is dissolving while we're still playing picnic. We're trying to have a picnic in the storm, and like we don't know the storm's going on, i.e. we're disconnected. We're suffering disassociation. However, and nevertheless, because all the bonds that make up the grand body of the wealth that's moved in the economic systems on the planet Earth, regulated by the Jesuit order through its military army style as the United States Corporation Company operating from Washington, D.C. Their bond platform is being dismantled, and we're still asleep, thinking that next week we're going to have a JOB type thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Which is not going to be happening. And so when the people start getting a little lunched and upset when they start, not eating and stuff, and not being able to discharge their so-called bills and stuff like that, and they're going to start getting kind of crazy, and they're going to start marching on the street, and they already got trash trucks ready for them, already waiting. And they need to know that. Because the people that get out there and do that, they're liable to get caught in them traps, because they're traps, they actually are. They're trying to justify eliminating the heirs before they wake up. Do you understand? The heirs don't know that they're heirs. So they're arguing colors and stuff like that. And race, because they don't know that the species is the human species is the race. They think it's other things. Then they're going to get out there and talk about monkeys matter. They do, and we understand it because it's lack of information, but they don't know that black is referring to the monkeys and referring to cavemen. Because they've been trained by overseers that that's an African identity. Of course, it creates what is called non-descendability, which is the function of the de Gears, why the brands were created. But of course, because they don't know about the estate, they don't know the function of the brands. They just think they're things that people call themselves. When it's actually a distinction of chattel property. And so the principle, the opposite principle of the chattel property status would be demonstrated in the Dred Scott case, 1854, 1857, as well as the Sundry Free Moors Act of 1789, 1790, at the same time when George Washington was converting the estates into the states. Same period of time. So you look at that in order to understand the status. And also would understand the operations of the coup d'etat to set up this political platform to create this illusion that the people are operating under today. And so because they're used to it, and they think, or have been thinking that they've been dealing with legitimate government, they have not known they've been dealing with an imposter platform. Are we clear? So the imposters are being outed, and they're trying to strike out while the illusion is still live. Some of them are going to Patagonia, going underground. Some of them are going to the Arctic circles, to the underground bases. Meanwhile, the people are still preparing themselves for JOBs and other things that pretty soon ain't gonna be happening. So again, this is why we're dealing with this information. Because the only one that has a claim is one who has an estate. So if the people are outside of the venue of heirship, they have no estate. Because you're not dealing with money, you're dealing with transfers upon a world trust relative to the world's largest estate, which is the dissolution of the Moroccan Empire to the Constantinian hegemony. That's the politics. That's the Great Masonic Secret. You are. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you don't know that, and you're the heir, they have power. That's basically what it's riding on. If you can't make the distinction of the illusion, they got you. And they're going to try to stick you before you wake up. That's what this is why, like when you see in the movie National Treasury, when people run all around the place and then they show you that all the treasures of Egypt is in chambers right beneath Philadelphia and Boston, telling you where Egypt really is, right to your face, but it's a movie, isn't it? But they told you the truth. There's the illusion. Do you understand? That's why Illuminati is claiming you a seal that woman saw in the watermark in the movie. Go look at the movie. They're giving you the signs and the symbols, but they know that most people don't know. They just look at it, it's a movie, it's cool, it's fun. It's an open secret. It's only a secret because the people are in an illusion. That's the only reason it's a secret. It's not that they don't have eyes, they can't see. Not that they don't have ears, they can't hear. This is why schismata operations is so prevalent in what you would call suppressed neighborhoods. They are loaded and bombarded with belief systems and different sectal systems to keep them busy. And the priesthood gets what you would call the Kabbalistic and cosmological disciplines under the subtitle of Masonry, which is, of course, Islam. This is why all the signs and symbols are Eastern. Do you understand? And this is just so that people can't play you, whether they're from the mosque, church, or synagogue. You don't get caught up in all that. You know that's to keep the masses busy while they're getting raped. And don't take it personal. Though I know that some people will. It's not an attack on people's beliefs. It's just to expose that their beliefs doesn't necessarily mean they have facts. It's for control purposes. And it's political. It's not spiritual, it's political. By both design and operation. All right? Now, so when you're looking at the crown of the sun and the agreements that was made between the Constantinian order and the Moroccan Empire, that's the Treaty of Tripoli, subdivisional operations under the Moorish Empire, as was the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. This is why Obama went to Article 11 when he went to Egypt. And he spoke of these things and exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. That's what he's talking about. Those of you who are readers and researchers know that Barack H. Obama is a constitutional lawyer, 33-degree Mason, Kenyan. He's not black. Black is property. He's Kenyan. He has a nationality. He honors his mothers and his fathers. He has an estate and he has a birthright, although he's in a compromised position for working as CEO, foreign diplomat for the United States Corporation Company, registered in France and in Puerto Rico. But he knows that the people think it's the government and the country. This is why he made the statements that he made. So those of you who have your cell phones, pull up, punch in your cell phones, just punch in your cell phone, Obama and the Al-Moroccan flag. And that's Al-Moroccan. A-L, one word, Moroccan. M-O-R-O-C-C-A-N, flag, which many people would call the American flag. It's the Al-Moroccan flag. Just punch it in your computer, pull the picture up and make it full screen. And this is what President Obama is backing up what he told you when he told you that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. He's telling you the truth of the government and he's breaking the illusion. In other words, he's doing his part the best that he can. And this is also why Michelle triangulated and went to the Alhambra. So write that down, Alhambra, which means the Red House. Alhambra, which is designated as one of the 7 wonders of the world, and it is palace in Andalusia, which you call Spain, last of the Moorish kings of Europe. And this would be the period of time of the Romanus Pontifex of 1492 when it was overthrown. It has much to do with the political platforms that you're dealing with today, i.e., which is called the Act of Congress 1871. So we're making these correlations because you must know these correlatives so that you can make the distinctions at all times. If you have not the capacity to do so, you will be subjected. Are we clear? It is not unlike, like say they have a concentration camp. And we know FEMA is a duplication of the concentration camps, we know that, but we're just making the fact scenario. Concentration camps and people are thrown in on a massive scale. And the representatives of the different nation states in treaty on the earth are sent to the various concentration camps, many of which are actually women's prisons, and many of your prisons which are actually private POW camps. So people call them prisons, they're actually private POW camps. When they start gathering up people and putting them in there, if a representative come and ask for the nationals of their states to be released, know this for a surety. If anybody's in those camps that don't have a nationality, they're going to get cooked. If anybody in them camps start talking about human beings or crayons, they're not going to feed them, they're going to cook them. And then they're going to use vaporization techniques so they don't have to deal with the ashes like they did in the Second World War with some other people who were claiming to be there, but they're not. Because the technology that they learned from there, they're applying in Executive Order 11490 to reduce this burden of human chattels that are no longer useful, that don't know they're heirs to the world's largest estate. Are we clear? But in the status they're in, they're looked at as expendable and a burden. The reference that the Kabbalists made of them is, quote unquote, useless eaters. That's the phrase that they've been using to justify the genocide policy. Go ahead.
Just repeat that executive order number again.
Executive Order 11490. King Alfred, Rex 84, Technical Manual, Operations Research. And of course, this is used by all politicians to keep themselves in harmony with the unum sanctum policies in spite of what they tell the general public. Meaning, no different than, say, if an executive operating any major corporation does what is called, through their subdivisional think tanks, a market research where they may place, say, certain businesses in certain areas. They will use these manuals as a guide point so that they don't overstep the Roman Curia and place some resources in certain communities where they're not intended to go. Therefore, they would refer to the manuals. That's why all people in industry and in any power position are either Masons, Shriners, Knights Templars, Knights Columbus, Thule Society, on and on and on, Daughters of the American Revolution, Daughters of ISIS, Eastern Stars, etc. So they don't start believing their emotions and doing things according to moral direction. They will do it according to the manuals of the Unum Sanctum policies under the Roman Curia, of which their corporate entities are members. Corporate members, all corporate entities of the Western world are members of the Roman Curia. Write that down. Roman Curia, C-U-R-I-A. All corporate entities in the Western world or Western governments, i.e. Constantinian governments disguised as quote-unquote Christian governments, are really Constantinian, and they're members of the Roman Curia. So these are manuals of political and social guidance, which means they're never confused. When they're confused, which means surface speak. You know, like certain things are said for the public, and after a while they start believing their own lies. You go back to the manual to keep yourself straight. So they'll say one thing and do what the manual says. Do you? I mean, what they actually do will always conflict with what they say. People notice it, but they don't have a reference point, so they just make frustrating statements, but without a knowledge of what's going on. Now you know what's going on. So when preachers say one thing and do another, unum sanctum. When a politician says one thing and does another, unum sanctum. When an industrialist says one thing and does another, unum sanctum. When the masses try to figure it out, all they got is belief systems, so they really don't have any facts. So they're always caught in the false matrix. They're the product and don't know they're the product. They're the stock. They think it's the bond that's in the stock market. They don't know that the marriage certificate, birth certificates, and other bottomry instruments are stock instruments on their estate that they don't know they have. Thus, Executive Order 11490. Administrative operations. You see. So, this necessitates that those who are administrative clerks on different levels must, for the public, wear titles that appear to be other than what they are. Thus, those who know the illusions of the world knows that the operatives under the United States Corporation Company who claim to be judges are actually administrative clerks of the estates on the local estate operations. You see? Just like an executor of the clan. This is why, like say for instance, when they're foreclosing on people's houses, you'll see them go to Chancellor Court. That's why it's Chancellor Court. It's an executor. But they know these people don't know what that is. Do you see the point? I mean, they hide it right in their faces, but they know these people can't read. They don't deal with facts. They only deal with beliefs that are given to them by the priesthood, who they think love God, Jesus, Allah, Yahweh, and stuff. They're really Skull and Bones members. 501c3 Skull and Bones kickback 10% agreement. This is where they get their benefits. They're overseers. Now, of course, all scholars know this. All politicians know this. The masses don't know this. This is where your controls come in, i.e. the illusion. The illusion is what they believe distinguished from what is fact. What they feel distinguished from that which is real. Are we clear? And so the points that we're making is to give you a definitive, comparative or comparable analogy on fact, not just loose hypothetical analogy, fact analogy, so that you can use it as a maxim pattern to look at all things. So when you're looking at the politics, you would look at maxims of law, nature's God, and what you would call maxims of law and the hermetic principles. That's across the board. Constitutions and treaties. These are covenants or national wills, and you look at them accordingly, never less than that. If you do, you're already caught in the trap. And of course, we don't even have to get into it. You know and I know that most of our people don't think on that level because they're not trained to. However, they're right in the middle. You know, it's not unlike us, just as an example, being in the middle of a coliseum, and they got gates all around the coliseum with different beasts and different murderers and organizations behind the gates that they let out periodically, and we're looking at the crowds looking at us saying, hey, what are they all about? Oh, that's their thing. Let's continue to have our picnic. You're the target. And this is really what's happening with our people who don't understand this. They don't understand that they're a target. They're just looking at, once in a while, people mistreating them. They don't get it. They're being eliminated. But they're trying to do it in such a manner that it doesn't look like that's what they're doing. Because remember, this is one of the operations of the Unum Sanctum operations, to dissolve and destroy the family. So what happens if they take the man and murder you? Do they just take your life, or they just destroyed your family? Exactly. Then baby's listed as a state ward. Any inheritance she got, the state gets it. Can she build wealth? That's how it works. And they do it. They've been doing it constantly with the false hat. The U.S. democracy operatives of the dark priesthood pretending to be the legitimate government, which was overthrown 1861. See the deal? See the point? And the illusions are all the agencies that were set up since then to support the fraud. So to fix this, you must go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers and begin to separate the imposters that you didn't know were imposters. Are we clear? You understand? So your questions and your answers are embodied in that synopsis of what I just told you. So are all generally, loosely, not all of them, the general political operations of Masonry on the planet. I don't care what degrees they have. Are we clear? That will include the Illuminati and the others, which is essentially all still Masonry, which is codified Islam, which is really where the Romans have traded places with you, and now they're acting as the sovereigns on the planet Earth. You've been subjugated, which is symbolized by the head of the Sphinx with a Moorish sword above the Sphinx head with a double edge on it, or scimitar. That's the subjugation of the Moabites. Subjugation of her, subjugated her, and they already got us. That's it. That's the politics. The manuals is Executive Order Contemporary. Executive Order 11490, which is a continuation of the Unum Sanctum Policy, Doctrine of Discovery, continuation of Spanish Inquisition. It's all connected. It's all one. Two hats, illusions of the world. Any questions?
My question is just simply, what do we do?
What are you doing now? And what have you been doing?
Right now, I'm getting educated.
All right. Essentially, the answer will be broader, but let's try to keep it simple. What occurred after the First World War Treaty of Versailles, and Germany was under siege and could not have a standing army and was being raped economically and politically, going down to dissolution. And then there was an occurrence that took place with a man called Hitler, and Hitler nationalized Germany. Do you understand what that actually means? Not what they're telling you in history, but what that actually means, what he did politically, and why he did it. Another scenario, the dark priesthood operating under the Jesuit order and the Knights Templars and Keitel's Ku Klux Klan, with its priesthood operating at North America, had a playground that they built at Isabella, 90 miles off the land of flowers, which you call Florida, and Isabella you call Cuba. They had little baby girls, averaging from, that they acknowledged, usually the 12 to 13, 14-year-old, although they had some younger, most of that was like that. And that was the little brothers for the preachers that prefer to call themselves Christian ministers and politicians of North America, the United States Corporation Company. So they go 90 miles off the coast of Florida, land of flowers, and this is where the playground was for years. They had casinos there, little brothels of young girls and stuff like that, and this was going on for years. Got so bad that the mothers were coming out fighting the U.S. corporate army people to protect their girls. And some of the boys too, they was doing boys too. And then some of the babies they eat in rituals. So women were fighting to protect their children, and of course it got quite ugly when they started, killing women in the street that had broomsticks and stones trying to protect their babies, and it got quite ugly. So the CIA, corporate operations of the Jesuit order of the United States Military Complex Corporation, which is really a branch of England, of the Lords of London, was doing what you call damage control. Their point man operating at Isabella was named Batista. So Batista had to be removed and set down to kind of cool this stuff out, because they didn't want all this information to come out to the public, the reality of what's really going on in the Western Hemisphere under U.S. corporate operations, that most people out of ignorance think is a legitimate government, but it's actually an imposter government, all right? So they trained an agent, a double agent in Texas area. They trained him for quite a few years, and his job and appointment was to help do damage control, PR damage control for the world, and give the appearance that the Aboriginal people had some legitimate sovereignty. And so they trained this double agent in Texas area and set him at Isabella, installed him, and set Batista down, who was the point man for the Jesuit order. The interesting thing is that the double agent double-crossed the double-crossers and nationalized Cuba. His name is Fidel Castro. Are you familiar? That's the real history, distinguished from what the masses know. Do you remember a couple of years ago, a few years back, when the president of Venezuela came to the United Nations, and he came up to the podium and he said, "I smell sulfur"? His name was Hugo Chavez, and he was making reference to George Bush Jr., who had left the podium earlier. Well, you see, the hedge funds that are based in the land of Nod, Amsterdam, which you call now New York, were being used to disenfranchise the people from their land, and with the hedge fund controls of the apartment buildings, land, sugar plantations, etc. in Venezuela, including some oil, etc., were being extorted, and the people logically they're the victim. So Chavez nationalized Venezuela. Do you see a common thread going on here? Huh? And yet, the Asiatics here at the north, who have been disavowed from the world's longest running treaty, most of them don't even know it exists, who the heirs of the world's largest estate still don't know why they were being nationalized in 1913 on up by no Duality. Yet they can see these things around the world and they still don't get it. This goes back to a part of the answer to your question. Now, without the nationalization, logically the people are not in their proper person, and in law they're not descendable. And an heir who's not descendable will never, regardless of age, be relinquished to them their estate. And if they don't know they have one, they're not even going to discuss it. This is where the category of minority has its operation at North America, why they're designated as minorities. Now, for lack of knowledge, most of our people, and I'm suggesting that I think you know this, think it means Afrocentric identity of small numbers of African people in North America. That's what they think minority means, because they're trained like rats that that's what it means. No, it means non-descendable people. It's a status. It's not an identity. It's a status. Non-descendable people. It's a legal status. That means irregardless of how old they are, they're not descendable. Thus, the corporate state operating over or administering the estate can continuously by legal process, not by law, by legal process, escheat all estates. That's back to the unum sanctum policies. You see the point? That's what's going on. So, as you begin to understand the real politics, that all of the operations of the stock market that's been operating since 1861 is on your estate. And you know these people don't know who they are. You know these people don't know law, don't know history. You know if you present to them landmarks of activities, political, that take place.
And this book's been out for about 3 months now. Published this book in April. It's called The Illuminati and Illumination of the Mind, The Ancient Musical Scale, Pineal Gland, Melanin, DNA, and Cellular Memory. And what I do here is I actually place the word Illuminati in its ancient culture, mind, science perspective, dealing with the ancient philosophy and sciences of how to activate the higher brain senses. What the Europeans have done was distorted the word Illuminati and have people thinking, because of social engineering, that Illuminati is some secret organization of Europeans that control the world. All right? Illuminati, the root word is L-U-N, which means shine, and the prefix I-L, which is a form of I-N, which means upon. The open mouth ceremony. The open mouth ceremony is an ancient Egyptian ceremony of raising you from the dead, not literally. It's not a literal raising. So you see the glyph lying down, and the feather, image of someone wearing a feather, filling height. All right. Now, the lying down is not a physical lying down. That means a mental death. That's when the pineal gland is not activated. I'm just trying to break these things down. When the pineal gland is underused, not activated. So you're lying down. You're dead. You can't see. You're blind. So to make you see, it has to, what? Be activated. So the Christ, and from the Egyptian is karas, and it means oil. Karas, anoint, to be anointed, as the word anoint means to smear with oil. To be anointed is when the oil was secreted in the brain. And that oil flows down to the sexual region of the body. You have your aprons. The apron covering the lower 3 chakras, as there's 7 major energy points. You have your lower 3 chakras, 4th chakra, Islam, pledge allegiance, Islam, pledge allegiance, Islam, pledge allegiance, 4th chakra, throat chakra, 5th chakra, 6th chakra, fez, head turban, headdress, crown chakra, all right? See the origin of the crown, all right? Halo, 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 halo is representative of the crown chakra. So the Christ, to be anointed, or the Christ rising in you, is where the Kundalini energy, the snake, asp, Leviathan, serpent, dragon, begins to spiral up the spine. That Roman, whom you call the Pope, was the Egyptian title. Pope is an Egyptian title. I will never, ever, ever call him the Pope. The Roman who's using the Egyptian title said. The Roman who's using the Egyptian title wrote a letter. The Roman who used the Egyptian title came to Philadelphia. But not the Pope. Don't say the Pope was in Philadelphia in September of last year. Don't say the Pope wrote any letter. Don't say the Pope did this. The Pope did this. The Pope didn't do jack, jack, jack.